Hey sports fans, here's a tip to keep in mind the next time you make your betting picks. According to research, home field advantage is no joke, especially in those playoffs. In the NBA and the NFL postseason, the home team typically has a 64% shot at victory. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The early line barrels up into hour number 3. Nice little segue right there, coming up to a question that we asked out to the public this morning. But we love hour number 3 because we're going to get the Coach James Young in here to talk a little bit of basketball. On top of that, how about Keith Stewart talking some PGA golf as we set up? Did you know, Mark Zinno, that just next week we will be live from the Masters? How about that?
Ooh. So you're coming to my neck of the woods then? You need a place to crash?
Road trip. Now, give out your street address with your telephone number so that people can know that. Where do you live exactly, Mark Zinno?
Yeah, I think I would love a Masters party at my house. That would be fantastic.
There we go. All week long, having some fun, eating what. By the way, the thing I always get a kick out of the Masters, impossible to get in, ultra expensive, but the food, Mark, not expensive once you get into the Masters. Like set back in like 1955, an affordable lunch you can have if you can stroll into the Masters.
Yeah, and if you could also stomach pimento cheese, which is gross.
Yeah. The Chick-fil-A throws out the pimento cheese chicken sandwich every once in a while. I haven't tried it yet, but it doesn't seem too appetizing at that point. You could buy an apple. You can buy a banana. Very reasonable prices down there for the Masters, as said. But good luck trying to get into the Masters enough to enjoy that type of environment. But it is hour number 3. The vibes are high. We hit about just every single topic on the board here that the people wanted to talk about. So the energy keeps the same in hour number 3 as we roll along, Mark, on a hump day. Like once you get by Wednesday, you feel good for the weekend. You're ready for the Final Four.
I know I am. I mean, I'm ready to finish this thing off here. So put a cap on this college basketball season. But yes, very much looking forward to Saturday night.
And before you know it, the NFL season is right around the corner, and away we go here. So enjoy the times, people. Early April turns into May, June, July, and then we work 24/7 all the way through to Super Bowl Sunday, and away we go with that. But before we get there, this is the type and the time of the day that we like to ask the people their thoughts. And we say, you know what? Should we fade the public or not? So today's Fade the Public poll at the SportsGrid Network here, at SportsGrid on X/Twitter. The question was, do you support banning either the torpedo bat or the tush push? 4 options were given. 1, ban the torpedo bat. Number 2, ban the tush push. Number 3, ban both of them. Or number 4, ban neither. If we take a look at the way the public voted here, 10% ban the torpedo bat, 21% ban the tush push, 10% ban both, ban neither, 57%, Mark. I voted ban neither, and I feel darn good about it that the public is backing me up as well.
Yeah, ban neither. I mean, there's no reason to ban either one of them. Again, the bat doesn't make the hitter any better. Rafael Devers could use a torpedo bat. He'd still be 0 for 19. That's the reality. It's not the bat. It's the batter. So there's that portion of it. And again, the tush push, all they need to do is let defensive players do the same thing where they could push each other forward. You do that, now we get an equitable play on both sides of the ball, and they're less likely to get as many tush pushes as they used to.
Take a look at some of the responses here to the poll, which once again has banned neither at 57% through a couple hundred votes. David R. says, just ban pushing a teammate that has the ball anywhere on the field. If I wanted to watch rugby, I'd watch it, but it's boring to me. You take a look at Adam Warlock 74. Now he says, raise the mound 2 inches and have the seams on the baseball more pronounced to negate the effects of the torpedo bat. So now we're negating things. And then Stephen Harris says, keep the bat, bring back the spider tack, then everyone has something to complain about. He's right about that. You bring back the spider tack here, and all of a sudden, the Houston Astros running their way right to another World Series.
Spider tack?
You remember the big upset with the spider tack? Where the Houston Astros, here's what was happening. The Houston Astros would bring a broken down pitcher in, and the next year he'd be the greatest pitcher in Major League Baseball because his spin rate would increase 1,000% on his curveballs, making him unhittable. So once they took the spider tack away, now Houston doesn't pitch all that well.
Like they put in their fingers?
Yep, exactly. Garrett Cole style. Yeah, Garrett Cole is probably the originator of that, I feel like.
Okay. Yeah. Now I knew what you were talking about. I'm like, spider tack. You lost me there for a minute.
Yeah, by the way, also, the Houston Astros, very innovative in all the wrong ways, but they won World Series, got no penalties for it, Mark. Like you talk about banging trash cans, having sensors tap into your shoulder when a strike was coming at this point, the Apple Watch and spider tack. How the hell did anybody ever beat the Houston Astros at all, at any time, at any season here, is my question at this point.
Yeah, there was a lot of extraneous activity going on in Houston. Let's just call it that. Is that the fair way to say it? The PC way of saying, yeah. Those things are considered cheating, by the way, not torpedo bats and tush pushes.
By the way, if we were looking at the torpedo bat, obviously, or the tush push, if we only gave you an answer, like, you see people on Twitter, it's like, hey, you know what? One must go. They give you 4 options. Pizza, burgers, nachos, and wings. One must go. Like, you have to pick one. You are forced to pick one. So if I asked Mark Zinno today on a Wednesday morning, April 2nd, SportsGrid Network, the early line, in the 3rd hour of the show, which one are you banning? And you have to ban one. Is it the bat? Is it the tush push?
I would ban the tush push just because, again, all 32 teams can use the same piece of equipment. All 30 teams in baseball can use the same piece of equipment. Not all 32 NFL teams have the ability and a 240-pound quarterback who squats 600 pounds to be able to run the tush push. So, I would, if you're talking about fairness and equity, you ban the tush push.
Like, by the way, how would like the tush push to get around it? Like, you sort of push the quarterback when you run into him, into the line you go. I mean, isn't it the same thing on like, I know you can't like push the lineman to start, but you can run into, like, the Eagles don't start where there's 4 hands on Jalen Hurts' tush to push him in. Like, it's hike, and then you run into the quarterback and push. Like, the defenders sort of do the same thing, though, no?
No, I mean, again, it's illegal for them to do so. You cannot push a defensive player into another player. Like, that's against the rules. They're not allowed to do it. So it would be
But you can run into the guy. Like, they're coming in on blitzes. They're knocking into their defensive lineman.
Right. It's not intentional that usually when they run into their own guy, they're being pushed off the route that they're taking. Whereas opposed to this would be a designed, let me get behind, the two, if you were to put 2 nose tackles or 2 D tackles side by side and push 3 linebackers behind those guys, pushing the 2 of them, that's what you would need to do to sort of negate a tush push. But I think you can go back to regular QB sneaks, and this is all a moot point. But because
Yeah.
offensive geniuses want to be in shotgun and 5 wide receiver sets, need one stinking yard. Well, the Eagles are like, screw that. We're just going to do it the easy way. Good for them. They're smarter than everybody else.
By the way, baseball the only sport that really gets on my nerves at times because I love to handicap it, and obviously love to win more money than you lose, no question about it. But no sport on a day-to-day basis. Like, do we ever look at the NFL and be like, you know what? The NFL put the dummy footballs in where they're just not going to travel as far and they're harder to recover fumbles. Like, they don't do that. Then you take a look at like the NBA. It's like, you know what, tonight we're going to put extra helium in the basketball because we don't want the players to shoot all that much. Like, baseball has been known to, like, 1 or 2 people know about, like, you know what? Home runs are up too much. Slide the D-juice baseballs in, and nobody will ever know the difference at this point. Like, imagine knowing in the past, like, hey, by the way, that month of April, June, and July, they use bad baseballs the entire way to sort of slow down the home run pace. Or, hey, by the way, tonight in the Bronx, to help Aaron Judge hit more home runs, we're giving them the juice baseballs here. It's crazy talk. Keith Stewart next. Golf is on the docket, people.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Did you know sportsbooks tend to draw up tighter bet lines for events that get even more bettors, like championship games or major matchups? My tip? Try betting on less popular sports. You might have a better shot at beating those odds. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Oh, it's that time of the year right now. It is April. No more April Fools yesterday. It's time to get down to business. And we're talking in golf terms this week. We're going to talk about a tournament coming up in the Valero Texas Open, but then leads us in to the Masters next week, one of the most anticipated tournaments of the year, and rightfully so. Beautiful golf courses, superstars out on the golf course looking to do damage enough to get that green jacket. This morning, it's Donnie Rightside, it's Mark Zinno. Now we welcome in Keith Stewart, our resident PGA professional right here, to get down to business. It's a great time of the year here, isn't it, Keith?
Donnie, what an unbelievable buildup. You know, we're coming off a huge mojo from last week here at SportsGrid. Mike Carver, myself, we both predicted Min-Woo Lee to win the Houston Open. We had a little south down to San Antonio, and then we go east to Magnolia Lane. No one can wait for it. We had a little preview last week between Scotty and Rory. Scotty comes in second. Rory complains about his elbow. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I think I could sum it up in one statement. The fear of expectations are far greater than the burden of defending, if you know what I mean, right? It's we're all ready for Augusta.
We are ready. And by the way, we talked a lot about elbows. Is Rory swinging the torpedo bat at some point during his stances there to be hurting his elbows like Giancarlo Stanton? We'll certainly find that out. But I want to talk this week's action. Down in Texas, TPC San Antonio, about 7,400 yards. This golf course, a par 72. Set the table this week for us, Keith, on how this tournament's going to play out for us.
Donnie, TPC San Antonio, we've been coming here, the Oaks course, 36-hole facility. We use the Oaks course. We've been using it since 2010, a Greg Norman and Sergio Garcia collab design. So you know that you got to be a ball striker and probably not the greatest putter. I mean, Corey Connors, twice over the last 6 years as a winner, kind of proves that fact. A quick couple keys for you. You know, you've got to be great on approach here. And it seems like I say that every week, but the last couple weeks it's been with your long iron play. This week it's with your wedges. Everything from 125 yards and in, you've got to be stellar. The second thing is that this place has some of the most horrific bunkers on the PGA Tour. They have little outcroppings, fingerlings, everything. They have ragged edges. It's the complete opposite of what you see at Augusta National. And people hate the bunkers here. They're really, really difficult. You got to be a great sand player. And the other thing I'd look to is that there's a really good collection of par fours here. And that's the place where guys are going to separate from one another when it comes to scoring. Those are my three keys for this week at the San Antonio Oaks course.
Let me ask you, Corey Connors has won this tournament twice since 2019. Some guys just play better at certain courses and they're very comfortable there. Is that a guy you're looking at for this tournament?
He is one of the favorites, Mark. And I tell you what, you know, he's definitely somebody you have to talk about. He's got 2 career wins on the PGA Tour, and this golf course is very predictive. It's one of the top 5 most predictive golf courses on the PGA Tour that these guys see year after year. And you look at the favorites, guys like Ludwig, guys like Corey Connors, Tommy Fleetwood. I mean, Connors is somebody at the top of the board I would lean on most. He's had a great run up to this. He's had a bunch of top 10s. He's hitting the ball extremely, extremely well, and it's a place he's obviously very comfortable. Some of the other guys, Fleetwood, never won before. Hideki's been a little bit of a roller coaster. Cantley hasn't won since August of 2022. And Ludwig, well, he's probably looking ahead towards Amen Corner.
Yeah, we want to spend some time here in just a few moments talking about the Masters. But before we do that, it's obviously a big tournament. There's some big names on the list. Some early leans on the early line, Keith, for this weekend's action at the Valero.
Well, Donnie, you know we're all fired up for the Masters. So I usually give you 2, but this morning I'm giving you guys 3. All right, how about that? I'm going to start with Captain Keegan right at plus 2,800. 2 top 10s here on the Oaks course. And, you know, in 2025, he's got 7 starts and he's got 5 top 20s. The guy's playing unbelievable golf. I love the comp of his win at TPC River Highlands. Get it and play off the tee and then score with your wedges. Second guy, Bud Cauley, plus 5,500 right there in the middle of the board. Cauley's had back-to-back top 10s, and everyone's going to say, hey, Keith, that was in Florida. I'm going to say, hey, everybody, guess what? We're using the same grass on the greens here, and the guy's been an impeccable ball striker for the last month. And then the third one, you're going to love this name, Donnie. Rico Hoey at plus 8,000, and that number keeps climbing. Rico Hoey is an absolute stellar driver of the golf ball, and he's great with his wedge game. Exceptional, you know, in scoring. The guy leads the tour every year up there in the top 5 in Eagles converted. And you know what? They're going to say, Keith, you know, hey, he's not that great of a putter. I'll go back to my earlier statement. Corey Connors has won here twice in the last 6 years.
When you look at a guy like Fleetwood, and you talked about where he is on approach, and you just look at his numbers and how good he's been, I mean, how much faith do you have in him for maybe like a first-round leader prop or something like that to come out hot and be able to get an early lead?
You know, Mark, that's the way to play him. It's proven at this point after years and years that Tommy Fleetwood has a very difficult time closing the door. So if you want to take Tommy, I mean, there couldn't be a better golf course fit for Tommy than this week. I mean, Fleetwood should absolutely hammer this thing, just like he was the favorite at Valspar. That was another excellent course fit. And where does he finish? He's going to finish somewhere in the top 20, somewhere in the top 10. He's going to like never really contend, but at some point he's going to cash at the end of the week in a place where you really just can't make any money. So I think the opportunity with somebody like Fleetwood is to look for head-to-head opportunities in live betting. And then maybe if he gets, if he does get into contention and the number is somewhat bettable, you can go there. But at the top of the board, as far as high ceilings go, I mean, Hideki's is way higher. And he's got a bunch of top tens here on the Oaks course, right? Cantley has played unbelievable golf this year. So head-to-head against some of these guys or a two-time winner in Connors, I have trouble going after Fleetwood this week.
It should be a fun one to watch. And again, the Masters on deck. Let's get to the important stuff here coming up on the Masters, because the Masters is built, Keith, on tradition. And the thing I love to see on a year-to-year basis is the champions dinner when the champion of the previous year gets to pick. I'm telling you right now, this might be the best menu I've ever seen from Scotty Scheffler. Appetizers, sliders and firecracker shrimp, and also meatball and ravioli bites. Chili for the first course. The main course, wood-fired cowboy ribeye, and then dessert, a warm chocolate chip cookie. The coolest thing of all time must be if you win it, you get invited to this dinner. How awesome is that tradition?
I mean, I think the easiest way to put it is that even though Tiger Woods isn't playing this year, he will be there Tuesday night for the dinner. He will make a point. He'll come in a wheelchair with that torn Achilles. For me, it's the greatest tradition in all of golf. Now, the week itself is a tradition unlike any other, but the fact that they get all those guys in the same room, Phil and Liv and Tiger and Freddie Couples and all the back and forth, but for one night they come together and they break bread, and I would start with the dessert.
That's Keith Stewart right there. Dessert. You want the main course. He's going to be with us all next week on the Masters. Make sure you stay tuned right here to the Grid.
Did you know sportsbooks tend to draw up tighter bet lines for events that get even more bettors, like championship games or major matchups? My tip? Try betting on less popular sports. You might have a better shot at beating those odds. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
The team we expected to be a national championship frontrunner all season long and even before the big dance. That is the Duke Blue Devils.
I don't care that people are like, oh, anticlimactic. You have the four best teams lined up, superstar coaches, young coaches, old coaches, veteran teams, young teams. This has got a lot of great storylines heading to the Final Four this weekend.
Only on SportsGrid.
They won the game, and a lot of people, I think, are, prematurely writing them off. Like, I heard a lot of people say they're not even making the playoffs this year.
What I give them credit for right now, Scott, I'm not going to pencil them to win the division yet. Let's see how they do. What I give the Red Sox credit for, and this sounds like silly, I give them credit for actually trying this year.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Days away from the Final Four. And a few days after that, from the Final Four, it is the Masters tournament from Augusta, Georgia. Fantastic. Can't wait for that. Keith Stewart is going to have a lot of fun next week. And even maybe bring a little bit of that home flavor there, testing some of the products that you can eat at the Masters. Very affordable here based on this economy. That's something to keep an eye on. But the thing that we're keeping an eye on today, it's Major League Baseball. Streaks. Usually when you have like a title fight, Mark, it's like they call it like the O must go. Like he's 27-0, he's 26-0. Somebody's going to get a loss here. The question is, which O is going to go today? Is it an O, meaning O for the season for the Atlanta Braves to get their first win, or for the Los Angeles Dodgers to get their first loss of the season? If we check out the FanDuel Sportsbook overnight, that line opened up at a minus 215 price point as a favorite towards the Dodgers. That line now sits at FanDuel live at a minus 235 price. Some other outlets as high as a minus 260 number, and a total, which opened up at 8.5, still sits at 8.5 between the Atlanta Braves and the Dodgers. Elder versus Snell on the mound. The question is, will the Braves score some runs, and also, will they win this game?
I threw pizza money down on the Braves on the money line. Why not? I mean, baseball regression has to come through at some point in time. I have to believe that Snell won't be 100% perfect, and the Braves will find a way to scratch some runs across, maybe an error here, a wild pitch there, whatever it may be, that'll change the Braves' fortunes and prevent them from going 0-7. But I may double down on them tomorrow again if they don't win this one. Eventually, the Braves are going to win a baseball game. I don't know when that's going to be, but I'm now going to martingale this whole thing. So if I put $20 down today, $40 down tomorrow, and then I'm putting $80 down the next day until they win a damn baseball game.
By the way, it makes sense because they're going to win at least one game this year. So if you had unlimited money,
Yes.
martingale is the greatest system in the history of sports in Major League Baseball. You can't lose. But then again, if you go in 10 and 12 games, people are going to have some issues with how much money you're already laying out at that point. But if we just take a look at the Braves, I know it's a short sample size. I always love to do this. Left-handed pitching, Blake Snell going up against the lineup today for the Braves. Most of these guys have 3 or 4 at-bats. We talk about the ISO power numbers and/or weighted on-base percentages. Albie, 0. Riley, 0. Olsen, 0. Ozuna, 0. De La Cruz, 0. Arcia, 0. Eli White, 0. Chadwick Trump, 0. Only Michael Harris, who's actually a left-handed batter, who's had some success at this point here, at a 500 ISO power number there, Mark. How about that?
Nowhere to go but up. Nowhere to go but up.
That's beautiful.
Everybody's at rock bottom. All we can do is go up. So let's play the percentage. They won't stay at 0 all year long.
Sooner than later, base hits will start. And what a better night to do it against Blake and Chavez Ravine. Those Braves desperately searching for a win. Let's flip it over and keep it out on the West Coast. A 4:10 start on the East Coast, which means this game's going to take place first pitch West Coast time at 1:10. It is lively. It is Cease. It is the Guardians taking on the San Diego Padres. This line, Mark, opened up at a minus 184 price at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Currently sitting right now live at a minus 180 price. The total unchanged. 7.5 overnight. Currently sitting at 7.5 today. The Padres trying to just hang with the Dodgers by saying who's going to have the streak that lasts longer here, staying unbeaten.
I mean, here's the problem. I don't know that Ben Lively is the right guy to snap the streak here. I mean, again, it's kind of weird. He only lasted 5 innings in his last start, and he wasn't incredibly effective. He gave up 3 runs, including a home run. Didn't walk anybody, but, you know, nonetheless, this is a competent Padres lineup right now that's raking the ball. And so this would have to be one of those things where the Guardians get to Cease early, knock him out, and you're in a bullpen game, which would certainly favor Cleveland.
Yeah, well, take a look at, again, it's very early in the season statistics, but finally a game you're looking at where both of these pitchers actually have a couple innings under their belt as starters in 2025. You look at Ben Lively, 19 batters he's faced. That ISO power number is 211. Weighted on base percentage is quite low at 271. He's been really good through only 9 batters, again, against right-handed competition. 0 ISO power number, weighted on base percentage under 100. And take a look at this, though. The San Diego Padres lineup, Fernando Tatis has been hammering right-handed pitching through 18 at-bats, Xander Bogaerts and Gavin Sheets alike. But in the middle of that lineup, Louis Arise, Manny Machado, Jackson Merrill, and Jake Cronenworth, 0 ISO power number for Arise, 0.77 for Manny Machado, 0 for Jackson Merrill, and 0 for Cronenworth. So we'll see if somebody busts out of their performance today. 60-degree temperatures in San Diego in the afternoon. Cooler temperatures today with a wind blowing in from left field at about 13 miles per hour. But those first 2 games that we went over, Atlanta and Los Angeles, Cleveland and San Diego, one of these teams here may be taking their first loss of the season. And how demoralizing would it be like, hey, We're 13-1 to open the season. We ain't even in first place in our own division. It could happen. More baseball talk next, right here on The Grid.
The team we expected to be a national championship frontrunner all season long and even before the big dance. That is the Duke Blue Devils.
I don't care that people are like, oh, anticlimactic. You have the 4 best teams lined up, superstar coaches, young coaches, old coaches, veteran teams, young teams. This has got a lot of great storylines heading to the Final Four this weekend.
Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The Bronx Bombers at home tonight against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Last night doing the bombing there was Arizona late, picking up a victory on a collapsing bullpen from the New York Yankees. But today's a new day, a 7:05 start tonight. Rotation number 929, 930. 2 pitchers on the mound. Decent guys. Zach Allen on the mound for the Diamondbacks and Carlos Rodon, the left-handed pitcher, on the mound for the New York Yankees. Overnight, the Yankees a slight favorite at the FanDuel Sportsbook here in New Jersey at -126. That is now up to -138 live and a total that opened up overnight at 7.5 and currently sits at 7.5 right now. Yankee Stadium tonight, unlike what we saw from opening weekend, 44 degrees at first pitch, a double-digit wind blowing in from right field. Not the best hitting environment tonight for the torpedo bats of the Yankees. Any thoughts tonight? Diamondbacks, Yankees, Mark Zinno.
Well, it's about Carlos Rodon for me versus Zach Allen. I mean, Rodon last year was very good at home in his first start this year against the Brewers, who were in 5 1/3, gave up 4 hits, 1 run, struck out 7. That's kind of where this thing lies right now for me. I would look at the Yankees in the first 5, even though you're probably going to pay a little bit of juice on the run line, and trust the fact that Rodon will be pretty effective at home. Other than that, full game, I'd probably take the D-backs plus the 1.5.
Yeah, take a look, too. It's, again, too early to handicap based on statistics from pitchers who only have 1 start, which Zach Gallen has. 21 batters he's faced. Doesn't have a good ISO power number, 235. Elevated weighted on base percentage of 377. However, if you do look at the splits, and they're small splits, 11 right-handed batters he's faced as a right-handed pitcher, a 0 ISO power number, and a 144 weighted on base percentage. Sensational. Now look at the left-handed batters against Zach Allen. A 571 ISO and a weighted on base percentage of 633. Again, only through 10 batters. But if you look at the lineup today and just try to extrapolate some of those numbers we'll use mid-season, you know, Judge has been on fire against anybody. That makes some sense. But the left-handed batters may be where you focus on. Jazz Chisholm, 6 at-bats, 1,000 ISO power number here on the early season. Austin Wells, 6 at-bats, a 600 ISO power number against right-handed pitching this season here. You flip it over to the opposite side and say, well, how do you think the Diamondbacks will do against Carlos Rodon? A decent start to start the season through 22 batters, a 150 ISO, and a weighted on-base percentage of 280, and a lot of power in that lineup, not having a lot of power per se against left-handed pitching. And again, these numbers are way too early to trust. They're just interesting sort of guidelines to point towards on a night that might be chilly at Yankee Stadium tonight. So keep an eye on that. Let's get to Paul Skeens, one of the most talented pitchers in Major League Baseball, going down to Tampa, but not once again playing at the Trop, outdoors at Steinbrenner Field. Some heat and humidity, 917, 918 on the rotation. A 1 o'clock start, Mark, the opening number. Favored for Skeens overnight, -120 at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Still sitting right now at -120 at the FanDuel Sportsbook. A 7.5 has turned into 7s now on the live number. Pittsburgh, Tampa, what do you got?
This is a very favorable number for a Paul Skeens start. By the end of last season, Paul Skeens was nearly a 2-1 favorite every time they stepped on the mound for the full game price on the money line. So the reason why it is this number is because the Pittsburgh Pirates have the Atlanta Braves to thank for not being dead last pretty much in every major offensive category so far to start the season. They're bottom 5 in batting average, OPS, and WRC plus to start the year. They're not hitting the ball. They haven't scored more than 4 runs in any game this year and scored a combined 3 runs over their last 3 games, including getting shut out last night. I'd back Skeens on the first 5 money line here, lay a little bit extra juice, and back the Pirates on the first 5 money line. I think that's probably the way you go. Skeens may have to be near perfect, but again, he faced the Rays last year, 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts. Okay. I'd be willing to live with 1-1 and getting out of there with a push if that's the case. Hopefully the Pirates can get some, baseball aggression here that I talk about and just find a way to push 3 or 4 runs across early and coast the rest of the way.
Yeah, take a look at last year's statistics for Paul Skeens. An ISO power number through 515 batters was 0.97, microscopic. Weighted on base percentage, where the Major League Baseball average is about a 320, he pitched to a 249 to both lefty and righty batters combined. You take a look at this season, and again, 1 start, only 20 batters. ISO against for Paul Skeens, 0.56. Weighted on base percentage, 221. Strikeout percentage combined between lefties and righties, 35%, leaving off exactly what he did last year. The interesting part, though, is Tampa Bay, again, not all pitchers are graded equally, we understand. Limited at-bats against right-handed pitching, but their ISO power numbers are a little bit low, but their weighted on base percentages are pretty good. Brandon Lowe, 11 at-bats, 434 weighted on base percentage. Camarino, 537. Aranda, 746. Morrow, 560. Meisner, 644. Mangum, 412. By the way, he's having a pretty good start to the season as a young player for them. And Caballero, 550. So some interesting numbers as they come across, but it's hard to doubt Paul Skeens in any environment at this point. Maybe the heat and humidity could help, because if we look at the starting temperatures of this game today, 89, Mark, at first pitch with a wind blowing out to left field. Maybe we do get some runs down there in Tampa today. But I'll tell you right now, runs might be at a premium in this next game we'll talk about. It's Detroit, it's Seattle, it's at T-Mobile, it's in the afternoon, it's in the Northwest. A total of 6.5 overnight still sits at 6.5 right now. A spread of -116 on the money line at the FanDuel Sportsbook as a slight favorite to Seattle. Roughly the same, but also some outlets, including the FanDuel Sportsbook now, showing a -120 price as a favorite towards Detroit. Are we getting any runs in Seattle today? It's going to be sleepless up there, Mark.
Again, very pitchers-friendly ballpark. Castillo has always been good at home. Tariq Skubal obviously didn't have the best first start of the year that we thought he was going to have. And if I recall correctly, last year Seattle against lefties was not great. And that's a little bit of a problem here. Both of these teams have struggled offensively. And yeah, you ask about not getting runs. I don't know. Whenever I see a number like this and I look at the screen, I go, yeah, I get why it's 6.5, but I'll play 7. You still got to get bullpens involved at some point in time, right? At some point in time, they're not going to be pitching a complete game. I mean, Tigers bullpen is pretty fresh and not bad. The Mariners bullpen, it depends on over the past 2 days. It's been a little bit overworked given that first game of the series. But again, I can't pass up an over 6.5. I'd play the over.
Yeah, you take a look at the conditions at the stadium today. 50 degrees, normal Seattle weather here. No rain in the forecast, though. 3-mile-an-hour wind blowing out the center field, so insignificant numbers. And you just take a look at those 6.5s, and you say it's not astronomical asking each team to score 3 runs or get close to it so you can approach even getting the extra innings where you automatically pick up that victory is one thing to watch. You look at Terry Schoolboy, again, last year, one of the more phenomenal matchups there. Go ahead. What do you got?
Even at 2-2, going to extras, I feel good about going over 7. Right? Like
exactly.
If you told me that prior to the game, it'd be 2-2 going to extras, I'd probably still play the over because at a minimum, you hope to make it 3-3 after 10 innings, and then you know you're going to win. So, I think that's the way I look at it the same way.
So low at this point too, and also the obviously extra innings have always been around, but even now with the ghost runner on, you can just pencil in that you are getting runs. And like, oh my goodness, we're going to go 4 and 5 innings without any runners on base. You get the guy on second base, move him over to third, and drive him in. Yep,
that's the problem with betting an under Major League Baseball. The no under is safe, even at a 2-2 game that's 8.5. It's still I would never feel good about going to extras betting an under.
Yeah, take a look at today's card, too, by the way. The final 4 games of the day, 6:35, 6:45, 7:05, and 8:38. And also, the 8:38 is the West Coast game, which means they're starting at 5. Same thing out there where you're taking a look at, San Diego at a 4:10 start. That's a 1 o'clock start. So we have today 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games, Mark. They're going to have a first pitch at 4:40 p.m. Eastern or before. Let me just ask you this quick question. Any superstitions about betting afternoon baseball as opposed to night baseball? Because I know some people are like, oh, it's shadows are out there and creatures of habit, and it's the end of a series, they're getting out of town. Any trepidation for betting day games as opposed to just a normal night slate?
Well, it depends on the time of the day game, right? A 1 o'clock start locally, shadows don't play into it. But a 5:30 start time in LA, the shadows may start to play into it a little bit, given how earlier in the year that we are. That's something to consider, whether the batter's eye gets a shadow and does not. That's absolutely a good point there.
The coach coming up next. MVP Talk NBA. We got it. Stay tuned.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. You studied the stats. You had the perfect bracket until your upsets turned into regrets. SportsGrid rides the highs and lows of every buzzer beater, bracket buster, and Cinderella story.
The Big Ten Freshman of the Year!
Our team brings you sharp insights, real-time reactions, and all the madness. Only on SportsGrid.
They won the game, and a lot of people, I think, are, prematurely writing them off. Like, I heard a lot of people say they're not even making the playoffs this year.
But I give them credit for right now, Scott. I'm not going to pencil them to win the division yet. Let's see how they do. What I give the Red Sox credit for, and this sounds like silly, I give them credit for actually trying this year.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The team we expected to be a national championship frontrunner all season long and even before the big dance. That is the Duke Blue Devils.
I don't care that people are like, oh, anticlimactic. You have the 4 best teams lined up, superstar coaches, young coaches, old coaches, veteran teams, young teams. This has got a lot of great storylines heading to the Final Four this weekend.
Only on SportsGrid.
Right back at it, hour number 3, cruising along all hot topics, and away we go into the atmosphere with Donnie Rightside, Mark Zeno, and the coach, James Young. He's coming in. Why? The Final Four is this weekend. The NBA's heating up. Unbelievable performances last night that we have to talk about, Coach. Basketball, what a time in early April.
Yeah, what a time, what a performance by everyone in that game last night, maybe except for Russell Westbrook.
Tremendous times as we go, Coach. Let's not waste any time and get down to the business, which is the MVP market, which I always get a kick out of. Like last night, you saw Nikola Jokic drop a 60-point triple-double. The only thing crazier than dropping a 60-point triple-double is that your team actually lost that basketball game to the Minnesota Timberwolves, which they did last night. But I ran right to the FanDuel Sportsbook, Coach, and I said to myself, we got to get movement on the MVP. We ain't getting any movement. Still a minus 4,000 price to be the MVP for SGA over Nikola Jokic, but 61, 10, and 10. I don't even know how that's possible, but it seems like Jokic always ups the ante, but not good enough to crack the MVP market, Coach.
No, I'm obviously what a performance by Nikola Jokic, arguably the performance of the year. But the problem is SGA is still giving you 33, 5, and 6. Yeah. And the biggest thing about it, Donnie, let's be honest, they have a better record by 17 games. So to me, the best player putting up MVP numbers, where we also have talked about numerous times on this network, right? Voter fatigue. We're at a point now where it doesn't matter what Nikola Jokic does. He's not winning MVP. Now, has he had a valuable season? Yes. But to me, this is also about the voter fatigue, the stats, and the fact that Oklahoma City is far and away the best record in the NBA.
Again, that's why people have MVP votes have all turned into idiots. Fatigue, nothing. Okay? It goes to the best player.
You know what? But then if that's the case, Jordan should have won about 10 MVPs. LeBron should have won about 10 MVPs.
Shaq.
And that's the problem. Shaq should have won 10 MVPs. And I'm not arguing with you, Mark. I agree with you. It should be left. If you go by who is the most valuable person on their team, yes, you can argue that Jalen Brunson should have been in the MVP conversation the last 2 years, what he's brought to the Knicks. But that's not what happens. I don't know how much basketball these guys actually watch. But I do know voter fatigue is something. You know, the year that Joker won it, they should have gave it to Embiid. Then the year that Embiid won it, they gave it to Joker. Now the Joker and Embiid won it too much. We can't go there. How about Giannis? How about the year Giannis has had? You know, so I mean, even James Harden has had an MVP style season. But this is the way the NBA works. After 4 or 5 years, it's like, we can't give it to this guy too much. Let's move to the next crop. So now that's where you got the Lucas. You got obviously the SGAs. Obviously, one Ant to be the guy. It's almost like the passing of the torch. But really, should it be? Do we want to call it, the MVP or what? Because honestly, Mark, you do make a good point. You could say he has the best, most valuable to his team. You take Nikola Jokic off the Denver Nuggets. What are they? I mean, middle of the road team in the Western Conference? You take SGA off the team, you still have Hartenstein, you still have Jalen Williams, you still have Lou Dort. You have other guys that can elevate that team, and they're a lot more depth. So yes, that makes sense. You're right. But unfortunately, this is the way the NBA has been for a long, long time.
It's interesting how it plays out that way. Yeah. Let's get to the topics here that we take a look at with the MVP race. Probably over at this point, we agree with. But the championship race, it's on and popping, Coach. It is. Because we are getting the tightening of the lines now. The Oklahoma City Thunder, plus 175 to win it all. The Boston Celtics at a plus 185 to win it all, followed by the Cleveland Cavaliers at a 5-1 price. We also saw an electric performance and maybe the best statistical performance of his career from Steph Curry last night. An incredible performance at Memphis. They're now 23-1. Talk about some of the line movements and some of the teams, Coach, you have your eye on down the stretch here.
Well, I don't want to go to the top of the board, right? Because I feel like that's all we've talked about is the Thunder and the Celtics. Let's talk about teams, Donnie, that's off of that beaten path, and even Cleveland too, right? Denver is intriguing because the game slows down, right? And you have a guy that could command so much attention in Nikola Jokic that's been there before. The team that is the most intriguing is the team that won last night. This is the team in Minnesota that was in the Western Conference Finals. It was the team that's had to figure it out with the trade of Karl Anthony Towns. They are 60-1. I'm not saying they win the title, but that's wild that they're that low. They have offensive firepower. They have a guy closer and Anthony Edwards. They have a rim protector and Rudy Gobert. They have depth coming off the bench with someone like a Naz Reid. They have experience. They were close. I think 60-1 is a wild number for a team that if they play up to their capabilities, I don't know if they win a 7-game series, but they can give every one of those teams in the West problems. I think it's more about the fact that they have to get out of that 7 slot and get themselves to a point where they're out of that play-in tournament.
I keep telling you, Coach, that the seeding in the Western Conference is going to matter greatly as to where everybody lands. And that was a gut punch loss for Denver last night, who would have been within a game of the 2 seed and now is only, 2 games of falling down to the 5 seed. And you still look at the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves and the Clippers between 6, 7, and 8. I mean, there's still a lot left to be decided here. Is there a team in the West other than Oklahoma City that you feel like, their path and their seed is going to matter more for?
Honestly, I have to see the matchups, because you're right. I mean, think about this. Like, we can talk about this now, and in 3 days it's going to change. And it's more than just 6, 7, 8. It's Golden State at 5, right? They can get on a losing streak, and they can drop down. So a lot of it is style, make fights. If you're one of the younger teams, you want to try and start to play better. That's why I'm concerned with Memphis. I think they did a really poor job of the firing of Taylor Jenkins. If you fire your coach, fire him after the season. Way too much drama down there in Memphis. There's something else going on that we don't know about.
Yeah, but the thing we really should be focusing on, the best GM in basketball right now is Daryl Morey with the tank job he's pulling off with the Philadelphia 76ers and Nick Nurse carrying through with it. We're getting the top 6 pick. Put a super flag in Philadelphia. Those are the big topics we got right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. You studied the stats. You had the perfect bracket until your upsets turned into regrets. SportsGrid rides the highs and lows of every buzzer beater, bracket buster, and Cinderella story.
The Big Ten Freshman of the Year!
Our team brings you sharp insights, real-time reactions, and all the madness. Only on SportsGrid.
They won the game, and a lot of people, I think, are, prematurely writing them off. Like, I heard a lot of people say they're not even making the playoffs this year.
But I give them credit for right now, Scott. I'm not going to pencil them to win the division yet. Let's see how they do. What I give the Red Sox credit for, and this sounds like silly, I give them credit for actually trying this year.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The team we expected to be a national championship frontrunner all season long and even before the big dance. That is the Duke Blue Devils.
I don't care that people are like, anticlimactic. You have the 4 best teams lined up, superstar coaches, young coaches, old coaches, veteran teams, young teams. This has got a lot of great storylines heading to the Final Four this weekend.
Only on SportsGrid.
Wrapping things up here on the early line as Mark Zeno finishes it up. DRS taking off through the radio alongside Coach James Young. Let's get into the NBA slate here tonight, Coach. Knicks and Cavaliers, real quick, before we get to this, just 4 games separating the Cavs and Boston for the top spot in the East. I don't think it matters to Boston one way or another, to be perfectly honest with you. But Cleveland has not been playing their best ball as of late. The Knicks still kind of need some wins here, need to kind of get to a better version of themselves before the end of the regular season. A fat number, Cleveland laying 10.5 tonight. Part of me wants to take the Knicks, but that Jalen Brunson guy still means a lot to them, and I don't think he's in the lineup tonight.
No, he's not. He probably won't be back in the lineup. But Ian Begley from SNY is talking about maybe the Phoenix game, gives him 5 games. Meanwhile, remember, folks, he needs 4 games to get to 65, which then leads to all league honors. But to me, it's most interesting is the total. I'm going to take under 230 now. It's at 229.5 right now in the FanDuel Sportsbook. Knicks have gone under 8 of the last 10 games. Both teams on a back-to-back. Cleveland at home. Knicks have to travel. Knicks have gotten blown out by Boston and Cleveland. They have to do a better version of themselves. But the biggest key, Mitchell Robinson is back. They're far better defensively. Take the under tonight in Knicks Cavs.
Yeah, Knicks 2-10 against the number on back-to-backs, just as an added note there. Let's go over to Boston and Miami, another double-digit spread here. Miami's such a hard team to figure out when they're really good and when they're really bad, regardless of what lineup they have out there. But Boston has just been a freight train, winners of 9 straight, and really none of them have been close with the exception of 1 game at Brooklyn. So how do you cap this one?
Well, if you look at it, Mark, the Heat have covered 7 straight games. Celtics are 5-1 against the spread their last 6. But here's the key thing. They've played 3 times already. All 3 games, Boston's won by at least 12-plus points. You're getting a point to the season, Mark, that you talked about with the Knicks. You got to start to be the best version of themselves. This is when Boston has to start to turn it on. I'm going to lay the 11 points with the Celtics tonight.
Seems like an awfully low total, too, for a Celtics game, for a team that can routinely put up 120 on their own. I mean, again, a 115, 105 final gets you home here, and you're sitting in a good spot. The other game on the schedule tonight, the big one between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Detroit Pistons. The young Pistons continue to surprise people. This is a game here for Detroit. Oklahoma City doesn't have to win this thing by margin. They don't have to really win this thing at all, for that matter. It seems like Detroit would be the more motivated team here, catching nearly 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing, especially the fact that a Thunder team, I think, has won 10 straight games. So I think you look at, obviously, Stewart out, Holland out for suspension for the fight they had versus Minnesota. But to me, Detroit's still 2-1 against spread the last 3 games. I'm not saying Detroit wins it. I'm not saying this at all. But you're going to give me 13.5, 14.5 points for the Detroit team that's been playing really out of their minds, and an Oklahoma City team that's so far ahead of the West that they may start to maybe work on stuff, but maybe play the bench a little bit more. Give me the points. I'm going to take the Pistons.
I mean, for what it's worth, in the big picture here, Oklahoma City is the best covered team in the league at 67% here. Detroit, not too bad themselves, nearly at 57%. But you're also, again, at that point of the season where Oklahoma City's sort of want to and desire isn't really a thing that comes into play here. We got a couple of minutes left here. I want to get back to the seeding in the Western Conference here. I look at a team like the Lakers, I think for them, it matters more than anything as far as who they catch and what path that they have. And also the Rockets, what play-in team do they get? If Memphis falls back and they get them, okay, yeah, I think they can win that series. But if it's an experienced Clippers team or even a Timberwolves team that gets there, I would take the more veteran team in the postseason against a team like Houston.
Yeah, because a Houston team that hasn't been there, even though Ime's been there, they haven't been there. So to me, yes, that's important for them. For the Lakers, honestly, I think they want Golden State. I think they want that 4-5 matchup. I don't think they want any part of Denver. I know they beat Denver up, but you get Nikola Jokic in the post against Alex Len and Jackson Hayes. Oh, good Lord have mercy. And to me, Michael Malone has punted his games versus the Lakers. Lakers want to stay 5, and you're right with Houston. They're better off playing a team like Memphis that's free-falling than a team like Minnesota or the Clippers or, the teams that have experienced coaches and experienced teams.
Well, and the biggest problem for the Lakers, you just mentioned, inside. If they go up against Oklahoma City in the second round, for whatever reason, if they end up in the 4 seed, even at that, and their second round matchup is against Oklahoma City because they don't reseed, they're going to get beat up inside for every single game that they play. So it's a bad matchup all around for the Lakers. All right, Coach, appreciate you spending a couple of minutes with us. As always, great to talk to you. Good luck with all the bets tonight. You guys keep it locked in right here on SportsGrid. The rest set up with the NBA, Major League Baseball, and a whole lot more. Keep locked in right here